Så vi fortsätter med 425 vi är här och området som har kommit in på reception och medvetandet. Det här är ett sätt att använda de verktyg som fann för att applicera ett, om vi skulle säga, annat kunskapsområde. Det kan vara bra att komma ihåg här att strikt taget så är det ingen mening att skilja i botten på kunskapsområden. Alla avspeglar ju egentligen samma implicitet. Så den här totala barriären som vi finner i den klassiska musiken mellan ämnesområdena är lite grann repetition. De går i varandra, de avspeglar varandra. Exempel av kroppen här att den är på något sätt medveten om relationen mellan en intention att röra sig och den rörelse som utför själva intentionen. Den vet direkt utan att den behöver tänka efter att du har rört din hand exempelvis medvetet. Och att inte den flyttade som exempelvis en spasm eller vind. Det finns ett feedback-system här som går direkt in i den sensoriska motorstrukturen. Motornerverna kan röra armen och den sensoriska nerverna kan känna rörelsen. De sensoriska rörelserna kommer ge feedback, information om rörelserna till hjärnan. Och det måste finnas en feedback, annars skulle det inte vara en proprioception. Det var ju det här som jag gick igenom tidigare från 6. Att människor som saknar proprioception, alltså det här som vi tänker på att vi har, det som jag säger att vi aldrig tänker på att vi har det. När det försvinner så innebär det ganska direkt att vi inte kan röra på oss överhuvudtaget. Och vi blir tvungna att lära oss att röra oss på ett helt annat sätt med synen exempelvis. Det tog lång tid, väldigt omständigt. Alltid inte närmast lika bra. Inte närmast i vanlig bemärkelse. Tro mig, om man ser vidare filmer om det hela. Ska se om man kan hitta någon som rör sig utan en proprioception. Det är förskräckligt. Och naturligtvis är det dessutom väldigt smärtsamt. Nu förstår ni också lite grann varför missljusning innebär att proprioceptionen är nedsatt. Vi har tagit fram kopplingen till yttervärlden. Våra kroppar är nämligen enda kopplingen överhuvudtaget med yttervärlden. Försvinner den så får vi så kallad missljus. Dåligt koordinerade rörelser och dålig balans där vi orienterar oss till jorden vi står på. Och vi inte vet var vi är någonstans. Vi är en del av rummet och istället har vi här bilden av verkligheten, en tunn skims bara, som betyder väldigt tunn material av verklighet, illusioner som ett fotografi. Så kommer vi röra oss därefter. Ingen mer information om verklighet än den ytterst begränsade som vi redan från början talar om, så att säga, talar om hur världen ska vara innan vi har sett den. David Bohm antyder här att klassisk musik är just det här när man har haft en upplevelse och talar om vad den kommer vara. Det är bara det här slutna vänsterhjärnesystemet som kan göra det. Alla avstånd, alla objekt där tror sig kunna se är illusioner. Det är ingen prestation överhuvudtaget. Det är helt enkelt språkets sätt att översätta den här. Det finns några upplevelser. dess reaktionen snarare är det utvikta. Tension seen as something unfolded, or that unfoldedness that is movement. And instead of seeing temporal, disjunction between movement and tension. Tension can be seen to be the explicit part of the movement. The movement being implicit. It's very hard to say which comes first, which comes afterwards. I'd say that where separation is in itself a sort of malice, something that doesn't work. And Bohm is proposing is nothing less, nothing less than a completely new connection. Sorry, not cultural approach. What he's proposing is nothing less than a new connection between what is mind, that is intention, and the body, something that can be very hard to explain otherwise. Let's say this is a new take on Kleinbot to see the connection between outer and inner, between nerves and muscles. And you can just say that tension is the enfoldment of which being unfolded in movement. It's a bit like them being nested into each other, and one can significantly improve the other one. That connection can be used to proceed and further your thinking process. It's not only the thinking process that improves the movement, it's the movement that improves the thinking process. And I see a clear connection here between Barbara and Tversky, who show that using space to understand, but also different movement ideologies like Alexander technique, where you see that you move and thereby you improve your thinking efficiency. It also makes understandable how tools come to change our thinking, quality of thinking, or thinking, yes. Sorry about the hiccups. Drink here. Very nice drink. Grapefruit and rhubarb. Try that again. So you can say that the intention moves around, usually reflecting outwardly and inwardly, while the physical action remains suspended. And this also goes to show the findings of Pfeiffer, which is so great in robotics, a Swiss engineer, a researcher that showed that movement in robots, they show signs of learning, they show signs of memory, they show signs of development that are quite astonishing. And here we are left example, first you can have an intention to move, but the movement is held back for some reason, and then the action is suspended and reflected back. And now it becomes instead an intention to find a solution to the problem. And the question is, are you aware of the intention to think, to search for a solution? Well, you'll find it's very hard to be aware of the intention to think. You'll find you're just thinking but not aware of the intention to think, the start of thinking. Sometimes you move and you're not aware that you have intention to move. But if that were common, you'll find that that would cause a lot of trouble, because you produce unintended consequences, most of which you don't want, most of which are irrelevant, inappropriate, undesirable, and even destructive. I'd say here, boom is actually pointing to the misuse here, when you don't have a clear intention and you don't have a good perception of the intention. This is the intention slash movement. And you see here why it's so important to direct thinking and movement, to make it more free, to make it controlled and free at the same time. Otherwise, energy in the movement will be dissipated when we don't have the clear intention and the clear movement. And it's a little bit like if you do something with chore, screw on the cork of a bottle. I think it's a very good example. You need a clear intention to screw it firmly on. It doesn't take a lot of effort, but let's say half of the population, they don't screw it back on firmly. Lack the last piece of intention. It's not a lack of muscular power, but it's a lack of intention also. I'd say that that's an unclear thought, not only an unclear movement, as we usually say, called an unclear movement, but it's also at the same time an unclear piece of thinking. So this is what I'm introducing here from Bob, is a completely new way of looking at thinking. Here are the tools used, explicit, but they make for completely new conclusions. They open up a new way of thinking about everyday subjects, like thinking and movement, such an everyday thing. And one start to perceive this could be actually looked at from say not only another perspective, but it's a more compulsive aspect approach, which makes you understand these things not in the construct of representationalism. You perceive something out there in the world, you take it in, you register it, you put it in your memory, you make a process, and then you're sending out directions, intentions to the body. It never felt true to me. It's way too complicated, and it feels like you go around the whole thing. And I always wondered why would nature construct it that way, when it's much more obvious that we are using a model here from computers or something similar. Some simpler information processing tool, and we are referring to the computer as doing those steps because that's how we are often handling different way, you can say that thought is a neurochemical process which can be sensed, actually. Can sense thought. Or when thought takes place, felts occur, tensions rise, and the whole body can be affected by the chemistry stirred up by thoughts. These felts and tensions and the like are going on inside the brain, and the body can be sensed just as well as anything else. I'm gonna do like this, I'm not sure about the sound quality. These sensations can provide the feedback which is required for proprioception. So here you go. The whole idea of thought proprioception is not as strange as it may sound at first. Thoughts and felts are movement, and therefore we suppose that it must be possible to have a proprioception of them. Since the body has the ability to sense its own movement, which is proprioception in a physical sense, we should also be able to extend this ability in the psychological realm. It is only a natural extension of body proprioception. In fact, it's very strange that we haven't developed it very much, not enough anyway. Possibly it could be when the brain first evolved, it did not seem to have a built-in proprioception for the moments of thoughts and felts. If it is there, it is very weak. It is usually upset by any powerful emotion. It didn't need proprioception because in the other days human beings didn't do a lot of thinking, just the bare minimum. Perhaps in any case it wasn't so complex and powerful as it is today. Therefore, proprioception of thought was not so necessary. But once civilization developed, we began to need it. Without noticing it, we built up thoughts and felts, and we still didn't have proprioception. Civilization cannot be maintained without proprioception. The more technology and civilization developed, the more the need for it. And I think this goes hand in hand with what Barbara Tversky has proposed. Man and tool hand in hand, man and space hand in hand, and how tools, more advanced, more refined, more specific movements, more complicated movements which tools provide, movements that are completely outside what they used to be. They have extended the realm of thought to a huge extent, and what we need now is a proprioception of the thinking process, so we understand even these more complicated things, or we create an awareness. It's possibly better to put it like. And Bohm goes further and say proprioception is an intrinsic potential that has never been fully realized. We have to find out what's blocking it. Perhaps we can improve proprioception to some extent, but the primary thing is to release the potential. We really do have the potential, but it's being blocked by the mistake we fell into, which fills the brain. Human beings didn't notice what they were falling into as they built civilization. Little by little they got into it, but they didn't know what was happening. And if you don't know, and if you don't realize that your actions follows from your intentions, i.e. if you assume they're from some other cause, then they are going to be very confused, something like Alexander Kahn called muddy thinking. You won't be able to survive if you attribute your own actions to something else, which is what is going on in society all the time these days. Our own actions produce all this chaos, but we say these problems are already there, and we just want to stop it or do something about it. And obviously this is a clear conflict, because we both want to keep it going and we want to stop it at the same time. Proprioception is lacking, and the question is, how are we going to bring it all about? And Bohm says further that thought without proprioception is, in the long run, just as dangerous as when the body is without proprioception. Because when you think about something, you may produce results without realizing that they are due to thought. By means of another thought, you then try to counter the effects of the first thought. If the intellect were proprioceptive, it would see that it's better just to stop the first thought rather than fighting it with the second one. It's just extraordinary how close David Bohm here is to the reasoning of Alexander. And Alexander says more or less exactly the same, but termed in different words. Bohm goes further. He says most of our social problems have been produced by thoughts. Without saying, I'd say. But people are treating it as if it originated in some other way. Suppose we say we got violence, we got pollution, we got destruction of forest, we lack money, industry is not going sufficiently. These are considered to be problems. Objectively existent, but they are all the result of how we think. They can only be changed fundamentally by changing our way of thinking. But people are acting as if changing something else is going to solve these problems. You could say we can produce all sorts of objects that we want. Similarly, we are going to affect society in the same way by actions taken on something as if external. So let me just conclude that little tidbit from Bohm is it pinpoints to that we normally in society today, in normal culture, think all problems are external, and we don't see the thought or thinking processes that leads to the intention being the real cause. And what he means is that we should reconsider this. You can see that nothing happens in the world that hasn't been caused by thinking of some sort, and it's actually not the action per se, but the thinking quality that caused the action that is the root of the problem. We've been trying to attack the symptoms. When we see fighting, we see disagreements, we only see those things, and we try to stop them on an external superficial way. But we should go to the depth of the problem, the inner causing of the problem, and the inner causing is in our thinking process. How movement unfolds from unfolded thinking, and how this hollow movement causes what is happening actually. That's a more encompassing, more holistic way of thinking it. And of course this goes hand in hand with the general way of thinking that, or seeing that thinking is some otherworldly thing, whereas it's numbers existing somewhere else, or existence being somewhere else beyond observation. It's a similar type of fragmentation, giving different results in different areas, of course. And we're talking about different forms of unfolding and unfolding, but there are very, very direct similarities, I'd say. You have a very clear parallelism here, I'd say. And I think this is good enough point to stop here. I say thank you and have a good afternoon.